Alright guys, welcome back to J-toyautoworks, where we take a closer look at RC. I'm your host Ryan. In today's video, we're going to build a TT01 Type E from scratch here. So let's go ahead and open the box and take out anything that we don't need. I see something here. Some sort of manual for stuff. Like I said, we can take out everything we don't need. We can just toss it to the side and then we'll get started. Alright guys, this is a recorded video. We're going to go ahead and try to build our TT01 Type E chassis here. As we go along in the video, there are some things that I'll tell you about that I probably won't install, and I'll kind of give a brief reason why, just for what I need it to do for now. It doesn't require some of these pieces. So let's go ahead and just give a quick rundown of what you get in the box here. What we're doing is we're setting the box to the side so we can keep extra pieces or hardware that we might need later, or just not really necessary. So the antenna rod here, usually if you have your receiver has a little antenna on it, you can throw the antenna in here, keep it solid. And you can cut these short too. They don't have to stick outside of the car. You can cut them shorter so that they stay inside the car, so you don't have to make another hole in your car if you're running the posts that hold up the body. So you can toss that back in the box. We will need the foam. Your sticker kit comes with most of your vehicles. It's going to have all your kind of warnings and cautions and stuff, and then it's going to have your lights, the stickers, decals to make the vehicle look like however it's supposed to be presented on the box. Okay, so for now, we're not going to need that. It also this one does come with the stencils. You have to cut these out. They're not pre-cut, but they are drawn as lines on here, so you can place your stickers on where you paint the inside of your body to cover your windows. So we're not going to need that just yet. Looks like we got some other paperwork here. Not going to need that right away. Let's see what we got here. Instructions for how to do the body. We will actually do this at another point in time, another video. We got a parts cost list for different. This is different chassis here, actually. Different parts for the chassis. So, and then you have your IPV breakdown. This is really handy. So it'll show like an exploded view of all the parts that you're gonna get. Okay, so really you should keep this. Of all the things to keep, maybe the instruction manual, but definitely this is good to keep in case you run into an issue where you need to order a specific part. You can use this sheet to identify exactly what it is, what the number is, and then you can use this sheet if you need to find out how much it costs, maybe. But a simple Google search on that will help you out in most cases. So that leaves us with, actually let's go ahead and throw this back in the box, most of the parts here. Okay, so wheels and tires, simple enough. We can set those off to the side. We'll come back to that a little bit later. You have your chassis here. We will end up coming to this. You would think we would need it right away, but we actually are not. Although we are going to open everything once we get it here. All your hardware, okay? Your plastic parts, and this, another bag of parts here, is accessories for the body. Front grills, wings, things that aren't necessary until you're actually working on the body itself. So it's not going to actually help us when we're building the vehicle right now. So we're set this off to the side in the box, and we will start to open these plastic pieces. We'll come back to the hardware here in a second. I will say that I did open this kit earlier to remove the plastic body. That's why you didn't see that. That will be in there. and also I removed the motor and ECS so that I can use those in other builds here in the future. But for now, let's go ahead and just start kind of cracking open what we got here as far as pieces. Now, I mentioned before in an earlier video how some of these are going to be they're going to come in like a kind of plastic grid, kind of like a model, you know. This is what I was referring to. If you haven't seen this sort of thing, you know, just kind of relate it to a model kit. All the pieces are going to be like this, so we'll go ahead and open all of them. Side note, just be a little careful while you're doing this because there's staples in these bags. That's why I'm just kind of folding them up. You could take out the staples individually, but since I'm not going to be repurposing the bags for any reason, I really don't have a need for that. Alright, so then this bag here, we will kind of open and set up over here on the side. Alright, so last big bag, we have our chassis. Now something to think about too when you're building cars, buying them, if you happen to get into a accident or a wreck, a lot of the parts can be sourced and purchased individually. So you don't necessarily have to buy a whole new car every time something happens. Okay? So keep that in mind as you're going along on your builds. Alright, so you can kind of see we have everything laid out here. All your parts pieces, like I was talking about, they come in the grids, kind of like a big model. Okay, so we just have all of these, just pieces here. Now, what I'll probably do is I'll probably go over the pieces in sets. Alright, so for instance, suspension, you got your front half of your vehicle as far as your differentials and whatnot, the housings and the arms, and then you have your rear, same sort of thing, slightly different shaped control arms and whatnot. So we'll go over that stuff in sort of sections to kind of break it down. So then you have your chassis. We'll set that off to the side where our wheels and tires. We'll come back to that shortly. So some of this stuff you can go ahead and set out. So you have your drive shaft. You have your kind of wheel hubs here. This is where your wheels, the lug nuts, are going to bolt to. These little pieces are going to go into your drive shafts or your differentials. Okay, so your little axles here will go into your differentials, and then the other half will go into this hub, and then this will screw onto your wheel will screw onto that. So as we get to building here, I'll show you these sort of things. You have your input shafts there for your differentials for the end of your drive shafts. And then let's go ahead and just start tearing this stuff down. See, now this is where it's good to have your toolkit. So we're not really going to do a whole what's in my toolkit sort of thing, but I just got a little box here that I use here, and you know, it's got a few different things in there, nothing crazy. But what we're gonna do is I'll just set this off to the side, and what we'll do is grab some diagonal cutters or scissors. Let's just use the diagonal cutters, and then let's go ahead and just start cutting these pieces out. Something that's useful to have is kind of trays. We're not going to need the tray for every little thing, but we'll keep the tray around for some of the smaller pieces. Some of these pieces do break off pretty easy like that too, so it's just a matter of, do you want to twirl around the smaller pieces to kind of break off the plastics, or do you just kind of want to get right to it? Now I will say this is not a timed thing, okay? So there's no real rush here. We're not doing this for some sort of timed event or a race or anything. Just want to show you guys that it can be done relatively easy. Without too much stress. So we're sit some of these parts. Now what I'm doing here is I'm just kind of sitting some of the bigger and smaller parts around, not in any sort of real method, but as I'll show you as we go along. As I open this kind of stuff, you'll see that there's, you know, things come in pairs, so you can kind of some of the pieces there, front and rears, are not they're not specifically so that they can be used interchangeably. This kind of comes into play a little bit more when you're looking at your hardware set here, which I'll show you what I mean, because it's not, everything is not specifically laid out for, okay, you have to use this screw here, you have to use that screw there, but you're kind of notice in some cases where they want you to use 2 or 3 screws, or should I say 2 or 4 screws for a specific item. They kind of come preset in the kit that way, so that you don't necessarily have to keep digging around in different areas during the build. Okay. Something else you want to do too, as you're cutting these things out, all right? Like I said, Lego, or not Legos, as like a model, okay? Keep in mind that you want to make sure that you actually have everything off of your tray here before you discard this. Now, what I do is I usually kind of cut them off, and then I'll keep some of the empty plastic pieces. I'll keep them off to the side until I'm finished building the vehicle. And on the same lines as that, you want to make sure that when you're doing this, that you're not cutting off the wrong piece. I'll show you a quick example of what I'm talking about. So like down here on this side, so down here you see these circles. So if you were to just trying to get to, let's say you were trying to get to this post here, you cut off this post, and then you thought that, okay, well, this is just an extra piece, and you just go in here and start cutting these, you know, there's no way to reverse any of this, you know, so just take the time to make sure that even though this is a really thin piece here, it doesn't look like it's part of anything, you'd be surprised that where it may need to go. So just take your time, make sure you cut them off appropriately. So you can just kind of let some stuff fall down. What I'm doing is I'm flipping the diagonal cutters over so that the flat side, the part that actually cuts, is closest to the piece that I need. Okay, that way you get, you know, the closest cut possible. Now we might need to go back. Actually, I guarantee you we're going to need to go back a little bit with the razor blade and cut off some of these edges. It's not totally necessary for everything, but it is useful if you have something that has a tighter tolerance. Like I know that there is in the parts bag, there should be a piece that comes with the drive shaft, and that plastic piece is on a grid also, so we'll have to cut that off. But since there's such a tight tolerance for where it belongs, we're gonna have to use the razor blade to get that to fit correctly. All right, so cut all those pieces out, do a quick visual check, and then we'll toss it over to the side. Same thing here. And when you're doing this at home, feel free to, you know, just kind of hang out, put some music on, you know, just have a little event with it, you know, because, you know, while you're doing this, if you're working on it by yourself, it can take a little bit of time. Or if you're working on a couple with friends, then, you know, you guys can kind of hang out, bond over this, tell jokes and whatnot. Like I said, don't get in the habit of rushing though, because you might miss something, which I'll demonstrate here in a second. If you guys have a favorite model or favorite car that you've built, maybe once and you really enjoyed it, or if you built a car a couple different times, leave a comment below on which car you prefer to build. Maybe you like the design or the quality of it. Let us know. All right, so we finished cutting all those pieces out, and what I wanted to show you is making sure that you got all your pieces. Now, I'm not sure if you can tell, but there's one piece left on here that we did not get. Okay, I'll leave it up here for a second, see if you guys can identify that. Now, the piece I'm referring to is this piece right here. All right, this is B16, this little circular piece. So, like I said, just kind of make sure that you're paying attention to make sure that you have everything cut off of here. All right, and then don't be too quick to necessarily throw them away, just in case something like that happens. You can just toss it over to the side just like that, and if you need to go back to it, it's just right there. Right. The TT01E comes with these extra kind of covers. This bracket here, the normal TT01 doesn't come with that bracket, nor does it come with this little heat shield here. So that's kind of cool, especially the heat shield. The little bracket, whether it be a strengthening sort of thing or whatnot, you know, it's okay. But the actual heat shield is pretty cool. So you got your engine, motor mount there. This is your battery hold down spot there. All right, so we got that grid all cut out. So before we actually get started on anything, we have most of our smaller pieces that we're not going to need right away. So we'll keep those off to the side. We have our cutters. We're just kind of place those off to the side. So now what we'll do real quick is we will grab the parts bag. Now your parts bag is going to come labeled a little bit. It's going to have these individual packets here. Okay, so you know this is good if you're building it from the instructions. Definitely make sure that you're kind of following along the way that they have it pre-planned for you. There's no sense in avoiding what the instructions say. It's just for the sake of this video and for the sake of a little bit of time. I'm just gonna kind of build it real quick, and then we'll revisit the instructions on a more serious note when we have a question or if we need to. Okay. So don't ever be afraid to use the instructions just because it appears that we're not using them right now. Alright, make sure you pick up the staples. Come in these bags. Toss those off to the side. This is that little plastic piece I was telling you. So for now, we're just going to put this right in there with the little plastic pieces, and we'll continue to open up some stuff. What I'll do is I'll open all of these, and I'll sit some of the stuff that we're not really going to need right away off to the side. Alright, so we're probably not going to need most of this. So in this particular bag, the stuff we're setting to the side, a couple of zip ties, your tire wrench, your wheel lug nuts, a couple of things like that. So for now, we're setting this one off to the side, just in the back there. Springs, definitely going to need those. Just kind of trying to place some stuff here. So what I'd like to do is, even though I know that I'm not going to be using every single screw that comes out of here, I like to just go ahead and open this stuff and set it off to the side. That way we can see it. It's there. It's still in its little pile, so we kind of get the gist of what they're wanting us to use the screws for. So we got some body screws here. So we'll set those off to the side. The body pins as well. So we got important package there. Important package here. Alright. We're getting there. It's almost time to start. we're down to our last bag here. So there's not too many tools. You ever get a package or you get a some sort of set that you need to build, and it comes with like a whole little toolkit that you're going to need. It really only comes with the little tire iron thing, which does have a couple different sizes as far as the nuts go. I'm not sure of all the sizes. I know the wheel nuts are usually 7mm, but aside from that, there's like 3 other sides, so you get a couple other adjustments, and then you get a Allen key. So Allen key is going to be used for the set screw that goes on your pinion gear that goes on your motor. Okay, so when we get to the point to where we're installing electronics, then we'll tackle that a little bit more. Now, it's also a good idea too, when you're going to build the car, after you've set aside everything that you're going to need, then when you're going to reach for your parts, don't necessarily, reach in like really blind and just kind of be knocking all your screws around and shuffling them all up. Now, it's not super essential that you do that, but it'll just kind of help you out along your build, making sure that you're keeping track of everything. All right, so put our Allen key to the side. So that's it. So we have everything that we're going to need out and ready for us. All right, we have a nice area here for us to work with in front of us, and then we have a whole bunch of tiny pieces. So ordinarily you might see that somebody has a chassis here and they're building straight onto the chassis. We are going to be doing that a little bit, so it'll get a little weird where I might have to have more hands than 2, so I might be trying to like hold it up with my chin or lean it against my body, that sort of thing, to kind of try to organize certain pieces. But for now, what we're going to do is we're going to install the drive shaft, all right, with the spur gear. So we'll grab our drive shaft here, we'll set that down, we'll grab our spur gear, we'll grab this big plastic washer, we will grab the long, it's going to be the aft end of your drive shaft, it goes into the input for your differential, okay, and then we will grab 2 of these washers, all right. And then the other thing we're going to need is 1 of these pins. These little pins in the wheel and tire video, I went over these things. They get lost so quick, so just make sure that you have enough space. It's perfect because you have a black surface to work on, so you can kind of see everything. I get that the components are black too, but they're more of a high gloss, so, and especially if you have the lights, kind of makes it real easy to see everything. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab the washer. Now I will say in the instructions there is going to be quite a bit of places where you're supposed to put grease, and it does come with the grease, as you can see here, comes with some grease, but I tend to not necessarily worry about that too much right at the beginning here, so we will revisit that at a later time. So you got 2 washers on. Now I know this isn't a super close up here, but it's we're just gonna do it this way for now, so that you guys can just kind of pause the video, work alongside me here. So what I'm trying to do is that little pin, it's got to be lined up. There we go. All right, so now that we've got the little pin set in there, on your spur gear, that goes onto the back here. Oops. Goes onto the back here. And we're actually gonna have to, oops, we're actually gonna have to pull that off just so I can set this down in here a little bit. Put the pin on here. Slide that bad boy forward. Just like that. All right, so now that you got that piece on there, you can just kind of hold it down. You have your other bearing there, so you can push that on. So then all of a sudden you just have the first piece onto your chassis. Now the other side is not as intrusive. You just take the other input shaft over here that goes to your differential, and then you pull up your gear a little bit. In this case, you know, all this stuff moves just enough for you to be able to kind of get it in there. So now both sides are in. Now we're put the other pieces. Actually, you know what? Just so we don't forget, let's just go ahead and do it now. This is actually one of the pieces I was referring to as far as pulling pieces off using the tools, or just kind of twisting them off like that. This such a tight clearance in there that we are going to need to cut off the sharp edges. All right, so now on the front, we're going to need another bushing. So you take one bushing, push it in there, take the other little plastic ring. In this case, it was P3. Okay, take P3, pop that on there. That'll sink inside there. You're gonna take another bushing and put that on there, and then that's it for the front. This back one keeps falling out, but that's fine. It doesn't have to be there right now, but just for the sake of continuity, for making sure that you have all your drive shaft pieces installed, you can just kind of test it, roll it back and forth, then you know you're good to go. So that being said, that's all that needs to go into the spur gear, all right, and your drive shaft. So since we have this in front of us, what we're going to do is we're going to grab our little engine tray here, just so we can keep track of our pieces. Again, another tight tolerance area. So we're cut off the excess from the plastic grid. And like I said, you don't have to do this for every single piece. It is personal preference though. If you feel like going through and cutting off all the extra burrs and nicks from the plastic tray when you took it out, that is totally up to you. And then for the sake of the build, we're going to go ahead and put this cover on, because if you don't and you start flipping this over, there's a chance that some of the stuff can fall back out. So since we already went through the trouble of doing this once, we will just go ahead and tack this on like so. And now what I am going to do is I will try to use a little bit of drill here. If you're not comfortable using the drill on here, like this drill isn't very powerful, you can see, so I'm not really worried about it messing stuff up. But if you're not comfortable using any sort of drill or whatnot, and you just want to use the screwdriver, definitely no faults there. So we're just going to grab a couple of screws, grab your screws, lay them down. So now what I do too is I always grab them from the pile. Okay, grab them from the pile. Go ahead and lay them down next to whatever it is you're going to be working with, and see, you know, how many screws you're actually going to need. I have 4 holes on here. we'll actually come back to one of these later because there's an actual trick with the whole engine cover shield, but we're not going to go into that right this second. But you want to lay down your screws. You got 4 screws, 4 holes. You can go ahead and get started. As a matter of fact, let's go ahead and pre-place these. Now, if you decide to use the power tool, just make sure that you just kind of ease up a little bit towards the end. And this particular drill, it kind of keeps spinning after you let go of the trigger. So I just kind of go with it a little bit and ease off at the end. All right. You just want to make sure that you're not going to be cracking the plastic, because if you crack the plastic putting in the screw, then that screw is going to be useless. You might be able to just use some quick set super glue or some sort of compound to be able to fix a plastic piece depending on how far or how hard it broke. But generally speaking, you can just kind of let it install the screw, and it will just kind of lift up towards the end. You're not really going to round out the screw unless you're putting a lot of force on there. So by that time, the plastic's going to break. So just go nice and easy with the drill. It's just plastic. So moving forward, we can set this off to the side. All right. And what I like to do is do some quick items that we can put together, assemble, pretty quick, and then we don't have to really worry about them until later on when it's time to put them on the car. So now, move this off. Actually, I'll move this way up here. So one of the things we have here is our suspension. As you can see, I'm trying to fight these. There we go. So you got your springs here. So all of this stuff in front of me is all going to be for your suspension. I'm going to set this up real quick in just a couple of parts, so we can keep an eye on what we're doing here. All right, so now we have all our parts for our suspension laid out, and then we can go ahead and start the build. I'm noticing that there is some burrs on here that I might want to take off, but let's just go ahead and start assembly and see what we get. So you got your lower part here, and then you put the little washer, you got your spring, your housing. All this does is just push and twist, okay, and it'll lock into place there. Your top here, it has a spot where there's a little hole. You're finding your instructions, you just see there's a little hole here on one side, and there's like a big hole, like a block on the back, okay? So the little hole just kind of fits right in this little U shape, all right? And then you'll see on this funky little piece here that there is an input shaft here that is going to go through that hole, and that just kind of acts like a lock. All right, so once you got that all set, you just have one little spring here. These are good for bashing around. You're not gonna really see too much of these particular spring setups in, let's just say, some sort of competition event. Now you might, if in that event there's a lot of wear and tear where they're expecting to damage the vehicle a lot, and they're not really trying to use expensive pieces, they're just trying to use what lasts for the event, then you might see stuff like this, so keep that in mind. Piece here, grab our housing, push that in, twist, and once you twist, you know, because it's not falling out. Put that in there. All right, so last one. What I'll probably do as far as those nicks and burrs that I was talking about a second ago is I'll just cut off some of those. Mainly they're the pieces on the the tops and the bottoms on the ends, that if you're trying to install these, they can kind of get in your way a little bit. So I'll just cut these off. Again, this is more of a personal preference, you know. Some individuals might think this piece is too tedious. I completely agree. But nonetheless, I'm gonna go ahead and do it. All right, so now that you have that done, wipe up your area. All right, so just like that, we have our drive shaft in the car. We have some suspension put together already. So now we're gonna move straight into something else I like to do, is the differentials. Okay, now this isn't something that has to be done right away, but I just like putting these little things together. So we have two sets here. We have two brass kind of washers. We're gonna need both of these. So I'll set this to the side. And what we do on the next build, if we do a, when we do another one of these, we will do a super close up so you guys can see every single thing. But in this, like I said earlier, in this particular video, I'd like you to follow along with the build process, using the instructions, pausing the video if you need to. Don't be afraid to take a break, come back, and then we can follow along, just kind of going over the steps like we just went over. There was a whole little suspension section, so you can just rewind or skip through that part of the video if you've already completed that step, and then come here to this particular this step where we're building the differentials. Okay, so hopefully this helps some of you out there that are possibly new to building these and are looking to get into the hobby and start building a couple more cars. All right, so we have our housing here. All right, this is just an empty hole. It's got some slots in it, and you're gonna grab this little Y piece, little flux capacitor looking piece, and your gears. Now your gears are gonna go in here with the gears facing the inside, the little circle piece on here. The gears are gonna face the circle piece that's in the middle. All right, so they're gonna go inside like this. So all the teeth on the gear are gonna match up together. All right, so you sit that down. We'll just go ahead and do the other one since it's right here, just ready for us to do. Remember, all the gears are gonna face the inside, Now, we have our little flat gears, all right? Those are just gonna sit on the bottoms. Nothing crazy there. There's two of them for each. They're all the same, so you just throw them inside. This is where we're gonna need a little bit of grease. I usually use most of the grease here. If I usually use this whole thing on both of these pieces. So what we do is I like to go around in a little ring here. It doesn't have to be super pretty, but you want there to be grease all around. I mean, of all the things to install and try to work on, having to take the car all the way back apart, or half of the vehicle apart, just to come back to re-grease something like this that you should have greased earlier, it's kind of a pain. So once you get the bottom greased, you grab your gear here, all your gears facing inward, all right? And there's gonna be little sections here. It's only gonna go in one way. There's no upside down or anything. So you just line it up, and then you just kind of drop it in. So now you can take the rest of your grease, just like 3 sections here. You can just push down. And fill that cavity. You'll see what I mean. There's like a little cavity that you can put this grease in. Essentially, it's going to be inside the pieces that you put on, inside the gears. So you just want to fill those little holes there. Okay. So fill that up, and then once you're done, you're going to have some grease left. I like to just kind of go around another circle here. Do the same thing on the other one. Alright, so that'll do it for this particular set of grease there. So then you're going to take the other flat gear, remember there was 2 of these, and all you're going to do is you're just going to drop that right on top and just kind of push it down a little bit so it's flat. Drop it right on top, push it down a little bit so that it's flat. You'll know if it's kind of off a little bit because it'd be sticking up. It'll match up like really flush. All right, now that that's done, like I said, you don't want to go start reaching into your little pile of screws and spilling stuff all over the place. So just kind of reach in gently. In this case, these are really tiny screws. All right. And there's 6 of them. Okay, so we got 3 screws there, 3 screws here. So what we do, we turn over the gear here, face down. This only fits on one way too. It's got these little blocks. Okay, so those blocks will match up to hold in the gear set here. So you're just fine. You just sit it on there, kind of rotate it, and it'll fall right into place. These are smaller screws, so you're going to need a smaller screwdriver. I will say if you're working with really tiny screws, not to use a tool, or not to use a power tool sometimes, depending on what you're doing, your comfort level. You know, things like that. The plastic might be really brittle. Just takes an extra second to screw this stuff in. Make sure those are good and snug. Alright, now that's done. Same thing on the other side. Grab it up, put this on, kind of slowly start to spin it. It'll fall into place. You'll be able to tell the lock a little bit back and forth. Alright, go ahead, grab your screws. Go ahead, screw them in. If you hear like the little buzzing sound in there, I apologize for that. I have a little fan. That's kind of going on the side here. Just since this is such a long video. Okay. Alright, so now we got all these in. Let's double check. Make sure all these are tight. Yeah. Alright, so all those are tight. So we have our brass washers here. These are going to go on your ends. And then you can line up your shaft. See, you see how this doesn't go in? Alright, so if you run into this issue and it doesn't go in like that, it just means that it's lined up against the slotted edge. So just kind of rotate it and it will just fall right into place. Okay, so now that you have this, you can just set that off to the side. We'll come back to that later. Put our gear on here. All right, so now that we have the differentials, the suspension, we have the drive shaft in there, we're kind of running out of things to do off of the vehicle, but there is a couple extra things that we can go ahead and kind of just tidy up, take care of. So one of the things being the suspension for your rear. So you can just grab all those pieces. All right, we will do the same thing with the front as well. So you have all your pieces here, and then we'll get our screws and stuff set up, and then we'll start assembling that here in a second. So we have all our stuff here for our rear suspension, or our rear control arms. So we're gonna start grabbing a couple of pieces of hardware. Some of these items are real specific, so it doesn't make it too difficult. All right, so now what we're going to do is you want to pay a little bit of attention here to make sure that you don't kind of confuse yourself. So there's some orientation, because you don't want to do it the wrong way. You're just going to have to kind of go back, double back on yourself a little bit. All right, so what we're going to do is there's a thinner side and a larger side. All right, so on the larger side, all we're going to do is we're going to take this this control arm here, and we have a long pin, and we're going to do is we're going to stick this pin through here like so. We're not going to screw any of these in yet. We're just going to do that for one side. So we're saying that that's the we're called this the right side of the vehicle, and then we do the same thing, so to make sure we have everything identical. Let's see, that's what I mean right there. So flip this around. All right, so now you want to do this exactly like this, so that you have it set up as a left and right. Okay, so I'll turn it a little bit just so you can kind of see. So this is the left, and this will be the right side. So when you go to put these on, you want to make sure that everything lines up. I'll show you here in a second the wrong way. So if I was to install this, you see how both of these pieces are lined up? You have two flat surfaces, okay? So if they're apart and you put them together, and then you see how they line up. Now on the other one, if you don't do that, or if you do it incorrectly, you still have your two arms. All right, now when you go put them together, they don't line up. You can see how they're not lined up. So keep an eye on that when you're doing this. That means that it's backwards. You have something backwards. So take that off, flip it around. You can put the shaft back in there, and then you have your solid. It lines up all over again. Okay, So something to keep in mind there. Now that we have all those in, we can go ahead, use our drill real quick. Okay, so we got our control arms for our left and right. So it's gonna go just like that. All right, so now that we have that together, let's go ahead and set those off to the side as the left and right. We'll set them here so we can get a chance to sit the fronts, which we're gonna go to now. So the fronts are a little bit more tedious, okay? The fronts, they have screws and things that you have to put in. Not like the screws that have the shafts there, but you need to use the pliers. So you have like this little kind of rolly, kind of like beads that you put on a bracelet, I guess. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our pliers here. There's 4 of these, and there's 4 of these upper A-arms. So we're just gonna grab, that, and we're just gonna squeeze it in there just like that. A little audible pop is good, just to let you know that it's in there. You know, if it's in there all the way, it should not bind. Okay, you should be able to twist it with your fingers. It's not going to fall out, but it definitely should not bind. If you get it in there where it's like halfway, or maybe you didn't hear a pop, then it's not seated all the way. Now, if you didn't hear the pop, it looks seated, it feels like it's moving around and it's not falling out, then you're good to go. Don't necessarily try to take it back out to get the pop noise and all of that. At that point, it's just not really worth it. So what we have here is we have our screws. We're gonna need some screws. You're going to need there we go. So we got 4 washers, 4 screws, 4 screws, 4 washers, 4 pieces, and we have 4 end pieces on these control links here. Now we're gonna set these up just so we can see, okay? For our left, remember everything is done in a left and a right orientation, okay? Left and a right orientation. All right, so we have our left and our right. We have our top, okay? So in this case, I'm putting the tops in front and then the bottoms in the back, all right? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna sit our knuckle. In this case, the knuckle goes this way. In this particular part, I'd recommend that you pause the video, take a look at your instructions just to make sure you have everything lined up. Before you go installing everything and then you realize that you made a mistake. Just because I'm not looking at the instructions right now is for informative purposes, so I can show you how to lay all this stuff out so you can follow along. But please take a second if you need to verify in the instructions which orientation to put these if you can't necessarily see it the right way right now, and then follow along as we apply that and start screwing these down. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take our let's go ahead and go with the bottom. So we're going to pick the bottom up, we're going to flip this over, okay, If you want to, if it helps, you can just kind of hold it so you can see what you're doing here, and then you can flip it upside down. Take your screw, take this, and that's gonna go straight in here. Now, again, sometimes it's good to just kind of start the process with a normal screwdriver. So I'm gonna go ahead and start that like so, okay? And then what I'm gonna do is I'm going to go ahead, grab the top, put the top on there, grab my washer, go ahead, screw that down. Okay, like so. And now I'm just gonna rinse and repeat that process on the other side. So go ahead and set that down on the bottom. Okay. Get your screw. Go ahead and start this a little bit. Go ahead and do the same thing for the top. Screw this in. All right, I'm actually going to try a different screwdriver here. Let's screw this in till it's good and snug. Nothing too crazy. Once something is, when you're screwing this kind of stuff together, once something is tight, you know, it's generally not just gonna fall back apart. You just get stuff good and snug. Now, you should expect that after, you know, after a long day of playing, after, you know, for whatever setup you're trying to achieve in terms of what you plan on using the vehicle for. After you get your vehicle out there on the road and you start driving it, drifting it, jumping it, rally, anything like that, chances are some of your components are going to start to wear, okay? And or some of your screws might start to back out a little bit. So that can be something to keep an eye on. So definitely it's not going to come from making sure that everything is over tightened. That's just going to cause to something cracking or breaking prematurely and damaging your components ahead of time. Okay, so now that we have most of our front suspension, our suspension, our control arms for our front and rears, mostly all of that together, what we're going to do is we're going to take a second to do our steering linkage here. Just a quick second. Doesn't really take too long to do. The interesting thing with these is they use these screws that have a bit of a shaft on them here so that they can move easily. This another tight tolerance piece, so you might need to cut off the excess from the grid, the plastic grid it came out of. So you just find that little extra piece. And go ahead and just chop it off. And as you get to some of these steps, you'll see exactly what I mean. You'll be like, man, why isn't this fitting the right way or exactly the way that it's supposed to. And sometimes it's just because of those extra little pieces of plastic get in the way. All right, so we have all this together. Just get some of these little birds. I have a little trash can off to the side here, so. And I might not put all these all the way in. I'll just kind of do it a little bit so you can see what's going on here. And the reason behind that is because once you actually go to install this, there's a chance that you're gonna have to take it apart. Maybe not all the way, but at least some of the way, because your servo is going to have to connect to this, the servo arm and whatnot. So depending on which orientation your servo sits, which part of the arm is reaching this this centerpiece, I'll show you in a second. You might need to take this back apart. So we're just kind of loosely put it together for now, and then when we get to installing the electronics, we'll see where we're at. So this is kind of going to sit like this, so you can kind of see it kind of like moves around. So this will be your steering, control your steering. Okay, so now that's together loosely, we'll just set it off to the side, and we'll probably revisit that a little bit later. Okay, so now it's time to go to the chassis. All right, now on the chassis part here, there's a couple things you want to do before you actually start going to try to reach for the differentials. You want to go ahead and put these little pieces on. There's two of these. They just have little holes on them. They resemble the bottom side. Yep, looks like I lost one of those little white washers, but we're coming back around to that. We're not going to need it right this second. I will set one to the side so I can put it in. The next ones are going to go to the axles and the drive shaft, so we have a little bit of time. So what we'll do is we will place these. These will just go on top here. All right, nothing crazy. And then we can grab a couple of screws. If you want to, what you can do is you can hold up the screw here. That way you can see exactly how deep this is going to go in here. So this, in this case, that looks fine. So we'll grab that. I'll start these real quick. I probably will use the drill for these four. Okay, so I got those in. So again, nothing crazy. And if you're not really comfortable with the drill part, you can always use a little bit of the drill. You know, it might seem a little unnecessary because then you get, if you want to go back and tighten them if you're not really comfortable, but it's better to just do it that way than to not be sure that you have your screws screwed in to your liking. All right, so again, we'll put that back. All right, so now that you have those pieces screwed on, make sure they're on the right way. Verify that this big hole is going to be on the exposed on the front side. Okay. Let's go ahead and take a look at the front. All right, so this is one of those scenarios what I was talking about not having enough hands, because I like to try to do this all at once. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab our gear. All right, if you have any grease left over, this is a good time to apply some of the grease in here. I do not. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just reach over real quick. That one. I'm just going to reach over real quick. I'm not going to put a lot of this, just a little bit. Just a little bit. Okay. So now that that's in there, go ahead and cap this. Set that off to the side. It does not matter which differential you grab, okay? Both of them are the same. They're gonna go in there the same. So if you find that it doesn't go in that easily, or if it doesn't sit flush, take it back out, flip it around, okay? Just flip it 180, like pancake, you know, toss it right on over. And then reset it, okay? Then just place it right back down and it'll fit. Make sure your brass washers are not in your way. All right, now in this case there's enough flat surface there to be able to just kind of stand this up on its end like that. So we're going to take advantage of that. We're going to grab our axle and drive shaft. We're going to grab two, actually we're just going to grab one. We're going to grab one of these plastic bushings. If you happen to have one of the hop-up kits and you have different bushings, the metal bushings, still you only, same process applies, but you're only going to need one bushing as well. And then you can stick the bushing, or go ahead and start placing this, and you have your axle. You can kind of rotate your differential, all right, and then you sit your axle in there. Now again, making sure that you have everything set the way that you need it to be set. I just noticed that in this case, this is in the forward orientation, but it's upside down. So no big deal. We just pick it back up. All right. We flip it over this way. Bring it to the other side. Go ahead, insert the axle. Hold your gears. Just like that. All right. So we got that set. So now we need to do the same thing one more time. So we grab our other side, all right? We grab one of our axles, we grab one of our bushings. Go ahead and install that. Grab our axle, okay? So this is what you're working with. You got your control arms, you got your axle in there, or your wheel hub. Grab your axle, throw that in. Make sure you have it in the correct orientation, and then line that up. and you're good to go. Alright, so now we have our front and back lined up. Alright, we have our front and back lined up, and we are good to go on that front. Now we can grab one of our end pieces here. Both of these are exactly the same, so just go ahead and grab one. All it will do is it will slide over all of this. So make sure you have your posts lined up. Okay. Once you have your posts lined up, you will take, on this particular model, you have your suspension post here. This sits on there like so. Now again, if you want to do the trick to where you put your screw on here so you can see a little bit further in terms of making sure that you have the correct connections on everything. So in this case, I'm going to need these screws. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use one of these. One of the back screws here. Okay, so now that we have all of this, because there's 3 screws that that go in here, they go through this piece. So what we'll do is we'll set that down. We'll grab our screwdriver. We'll start each one of these a little bit so they're not falling out on us. And once we have it started, we'll go back to the drill. Again, you'll be able to tell. You can kind of push on some of these pieces here and see if they're seated all the way. So yeah, so everything here, except for this one, it's like a little bit. Okay, there we go. All right, so set our drill back off to the side, screwdrivers. So now we have our front piece of our vehicle on there. As a matter of fact, I just made another mistake, but this is a good time to make sure that we're clarifying that which part of the vehicle is the front and which part of the vehicle is the rear. So remember that this half that covers the motor, okay, your motor is going to be in the rear of your vehicle, and then your front of your vehicle is going to be up here. So since I made a mistake, there's no need to take off extra hardware, all right? But what you can do, and this is a good chance to go over this too after I remove these screws. Is if you're going to have to do some maintenance on something and you need to take apart an item, if you can leave your screws in there, just like how I pulled that off, how we put it in there, and you can set it off to the side And same thing with your essentially all of this stuff up top. You can pull this off. All of this, just like that. You can turn it upside down and you can sit it so that if you need to come back to do any maintenance, or if you need to work or change a gear or something like that in here, then you can do that without much fuss. So in this case, since we made that slight mistake, you can see it doesn't take any time to repair a mistake. So if you have any mishaps or mistakes or anything like that, don't be afraid to go back and take care of what needs to be fixed before you start actually trying to use your vehicle. So that being said, we have all the right hardware here this time. Nothing has changed. All we're going to do is grab the other differential. Like I said, it didn't matter which one before, and it doesn't matter now. So we'll grab our bushing here, one bushing, put it on there like so, throw it into your housing. Okay, grab your axle, throw that in. I'm just kind of holding this with my finger. That's why I'm doing it this way. So if you have a hard time where you're dropping it or whatnot, not a big deal. Just take care of it, and you can put it in after you get one side in. So grab your washer or your bearing. Go ahead and throw that in. One more time. Grab your axle. Again, just kind of holding that on with my finger here. And I'm just kind of placing this all together. All right. Rinse and repeat. You have your cover here. Go ahead and make sure everything's lined up. It'll just kind of fall right into place. Go ahead and get your screws. Actually, go ahead and grab your bracket, then get your screws so you can go ahead and start placing those. Then you can go ahead and put that on. Oops. All right, so now that we got that set, go ahead and screw this on. Get these started by hand. Then I'll follow up with the drill. Okay, that's in there good. So we got the rear of our vehicle here. We got that in. All right. So now I'm gonna take 2 seconds to find that other washer we dropped. All right, we got the washer. So now we're back on track. Go ahead, install that washer, the one that fell out of here earlier. We got our gear. Go ahead, throw that on. It only fits in there. Remember, the splines have to be facing you, okay? The splines face you. Put some grease in. Not too much. Go ahead and cap the, go ahead and use it if it's still coming out there. Go ahead and cap it after. Go ahead and cap it. All right. So now your car won't really stand up on itself anymore. So this does get a little bit tricky. So what I'll do normally is I'll just kind of lean it up against myself to give me the opportunity to try to grab everything. And then I'll just kind of try to fit it that together like so. All right, so now we got that back on the correct side this time. Start our screws. All right, so we got our screws started. Go ahead and use some of the okay. All right, so set our drill back off to the side, and as you can kind of see, we're kind of running through all of our parts here. You know, we did have a bunch of stuff over here, then we built the suspension arms, then we kind of came back, grabbed those, got our differentials, grabbed those. So once you kind of build up every little piece, then you can kind of attach it to the vehicle, so that you don't necessarily have to build it on the car. Sometimes that can be frustrating because you're not really sure where something goes or if it's supposed to go there in the first place. So that's just something to keep in mind. So what we'll do now is we will grab our screws for our suspension. Okay. So now the big part of the suspension goes on the top. All right. So we'll grab a screw. This will go on the inboard. On the top of your post here, there's going to be a really big hole in the middle, and then there's going to be two little holes. It's going to go on the inside hole, right? Inside hole. So that's good. Grab one more. And remember, you got to use these the screws that have the shaft on there. That shaft is just going to allow for the distance, so that the suspension can sit on the car without actually hitting the post on the arms and whatnot, so it can have the free travel. All right, so we have all four of those started. So I'll just use the drill again. And I know you hear the drill bit kind of slipping out of the screw there. That's because I'm trying to pull back on it, so it's not applying so much force. I don't want it to break anything. All right, so we'll grab four more. Those screws. Same deal. These are going to go on your inboard. Just kind of start that a little bit. You can see how I'm just kind of flipping the car over. You can just kind of work around the car. If you're comfortable working around the car, it just kind of saves you time from having to necessarily kind of keep going back and forth to the upright orientation. Alright, so we got all our screws started. Bring in the drill one more time. Right. So like I said, on this part here, I might not screw these all the way down just yet. So what we'll do is we will grab some of the other hardware here. These are going to be your post that your steering linkage sits on. All right. And these are like really long set screws. So there's this two particular holes on the front here that you can screw these down into. So what I like to do is I'll get them started. These posts, the silver post to my right over there, those are gonna screw onto these. So and these, they only screw down so far, okay? So if they don't screw all the way down flush, then that means you have to screw in the set screw some more. So on mine, I got about 2 millimeters worth of gap there. So I'll leave that on. And I'll screw this down until it stops. So screwing this down, it will stop. And then you can take your linkage. Again, we didn't screw this all the way down in case we need to take it apart a little bit for these servos. So we're gonna take it. And then we'll screw these shafts to go on. So like right now, having a little bit of trouble. So again, we didn't screw this down all the way. So we'll just pop that off, sit that down on there like so. And then we can screw these pieces in. These pieces in the front, those are now good to go since we can see that it sets well. Alright, so those are good to go. These back ones, however, are not. We'll just leave those. We'll just leave those temporarily. And we can screw on the. We can screw on the front. I use the back holes here for the. Oops, for the positioning. There's two holes to choose from. I just use the back ones Okay, so we use a little bit of power tools here. Some of these parts you want to make sure you're supporting them. Alright, so without the actual steering linkage being all the way connected, you can see it does still turn, still holds. But like I said, once we go to try to input the servo, we're probably gonna have to take this arm off again, just so we can work with the clearance between the way the servo attaches. The kind of big gear, it's this big plastic piece here, so we gotta fit that on there, and then depending on the orientation that takes, we will screw the rest of that down. All right, so the next couple things that we can do, we're almost finished. I know we have a lot of screws left over here onto the side, but some of those are going to be for your electronics. As far as I see the pinion gear over there. So this particular bag has what we're going to do for our wheels. So with our wheels, what we're going to do is we can go ahead and put in our bearings. All right, put in bearings. Let's just do one side at a time because they're most likely just going to fall out anyway. Let's go ahead and open our wheels. Again, make sure you're watching out for these staples. Both these staples fell out, so grab those. Set the car off just for a second. 2 tires. 2 wheels. So you can see that one pretty much breaks out pretty easily. If you do have big burrs on here, you are going to want to cut those off, just because they're gonna, if they're big enough, they can kind of wear in with the tire. So if you have big burrs on there, go ahead and just take care of those. So 2 wheels, 2 tires. Let's go ahead and get those put together, and then we can start putting those on the car, and we're starting to get a good feel for how the whole thing is going to come together. All right, so these wheels we can just pop right on. A lot of the times you can get like foam. It really helps like cushion the wheel, keeps the surface of the wheel together. What I mean is, like, so when you're driving on the street or whatnot, if you hit like bumps and stuff, it doesn't really like mess up your wear pattern and stuff a lot. I'm just kind of pinching this this tire around, letting it kind of fall into the groove. You can see how there's like a groove here, so the tire is going to sit inside that groove on the wheel. So that's all I'm doing here, is just trying to make sure that it falls into that groove. And then if you get it on the other side, you can just kind of rotate it, and it will fall right in. Just kind of pinch it. So we got 2. Set that over there. Now, as far as wheels and tires goes, guys, there's a lot of options out there. Check out my other video that I made on some kind of tips for when you're looking for wheels and tires, different kinds that are out there. There's absolutely nothing wrong with what comes in your kit. Whatever you use on the kit, you know, it was already put together as a package, so there's no reason to try to avoid using something because you're afraid that there's better stuff out there. There is better stuff out there, but you already spent the money on the kit. So my advice would be to use what you have included in the kit, and then, you know, if you feel like upgrading a part or upgrading something, then look at tires as an option for an additional piece to upgrade. Like I said, if you need more specifics on the different kinds of wheel lug nuts or things like that, then check out the wheel and tire video. In this case, we're just going to go ahead, put the little pin that it comes with. We already got our bearings in there, so we got our pin. Push our pin, go to our small parts bin. There's going to be some little wheel hex pieces in here. All right, we're just going to little thin pieces. If you look at the back of the wheel, they're going to be shaped exactly the same. They're going to just fit in there. So you just grab one of those, stick it onto this piece, make sure it goes flat. If it doesn't go flat, then that metal pin is off one side or the other. So flat. You can go ahead and do that. Once it's kind of locks itself in there, so once you get it in there, you can move straight to the other side before putting the wheel on if you like. So push it down. What I mean by that is, like, see how we just put those on and we push them down, so they're kind of locked into place. So it's not necessarily going to fall apart, but it's good to just go ahead, move straight to positioning the wheel so that you know you don't have to worry about that again. And I'll just loosely put that lug nut on there. Same thing, you want to make sure your wheel sits flat. Sometimes I sit it on there off angle on purpose, and I'll give it a little spin to where it drops down. That way I know that it's seated properly. Then you can give it a couple of twists. And then we're cheat here. We use the drill instead of the tool the normal way. So we just hold that down. Now we can flip it over. We have a nice flat surface to work with. Grab our 2 remaining bearings. Okay, you're not going to have any bearings left. No extra bearings. Extra screws, but no extra bearings. You want to locate anything that you dropped on the floor during your installation. You make sure you have all your parts and pieces accounted for. Go ahead and push that down. Put the pin in there. Put your little heights on there. Push that down. Make sure they're flat. Grab your wheels. Push those down. Little nuts. And now, just like a real car, you don't necessarily want to start screwing these on here without hand starting them first, just in case you cross thread it. Some pieces like axles and whatnot, wheel hubs, things you're not going to have extras of. So if you mess it up, it's just going to be more tedious, more time consuming. You're going to have to, come to the store, order another one. And then we can get you on your way. Okay, now you can see that we pretty much have a full car here. What we can do is on the bottom side, you have these pieces here. These will go in. These will kind of hold everything together. Make sure nothing's going to come apart. And then they also hold your bumpers for like the foam. We have one. We only have one here. We will install it though. So we have one bumper. So right now I'm grabbing the screws for the bottom. Okay. So we got some screws going to be on the bottom. Most of the screws that go on the bottom surface of your vehicle are going to be flat screws. You're going to have flat heads. Okay. So keep that in mind. And then we're going to need a bunch of these other screws. We're going to need 6 of them. We're going to need 6 of them because there's three screw holes at the front and 3 at the rear. So we got all these. All right, so we got our 6 screws. So what I like to do is just gonna go ahead and place these a little bit. I'm just doing this because I'm gonna go ahead and place the fronts also, so we can just use the drill and screw all these down at one time. Let me know in the comments as well if you like this kind of video going over a full tutorial straight through. This one's shot in 1080. I didn't want to do it in 4K because I'm not sure if I can record that long. But essentially I just wanted to be able to get this information out to you guys so you guys can see and follow along the way that we do it, and you can see that it's pretty easy to accomplish yourself. Okay. So we got our full car here. We can go ahead and throw our little foam piece on. It's a bumper piece. You know, they used to include some of these where it was the front and the back. I guess sometimes they just didn't want to include the back portion. But if you have any extra pieces, usually you'll see them around. They come in this kind of black foam. Sometimes you can get harder ones in like a blue foam. Just something good to have in case, you know, you run into something, especially in the front, full speed. You know, you might slide around and hit the rear of the car, but mainly in the front, that's what you want to have. All right, so there's a couple little things that we can tighten up here, but overall, that is mostly it. We got our battery post here. So what I'll do is grab 2 more flat screws. Remember, the flat screws are going to go on the bottom. And I'll just do these real quick by hand. Okay, so that pretty much wraps it up for this video. There's a couple pieces like this. This piece will go over the top like this. Sometimes I don't really install this piece. What I do install when we get into the electronics in the next video is the motor mount, or the motor shield, the heat shield there, just to make sure that nobody burns any hands or fingers while changing batteries or whatnot after they've been using the car. So yeah, so that's the full video. We're set this stuff to the side. The only parts we have left over are stuff like the body post. The body post, there's a couple different types. We can stick them in so you can kind of get an idea. We won't use those ones. So in case you were wondering what they look like, when we do the body, we'll do this, we might go over these posts, but essentially there's just a screw hole up here in the front, and there's a screw right in like that. So as you can see, we do have quite a bit of screws left over. You know, aside from the bracket here, you know, it's got a couple of screw holes, at least 8 in this one piece alone. So different screws that you can use for different foam pieces. If you have another attachment, we're going to have to install the motor. There's going to be some screws for that, screws for the servo brackets. So once we get into the electronics portion, then we'll take another look at our stack of screws. By that time, we'll kind of consolidate them because it'll be a lot easier to see exactly what we have, because they're going to be machine screws since we're going to be using them on metal. And then the different plastic ones we can use as is later when we get to it. But here's your full car, complete. All it needs is this electronics, but you are good to go on your build. So congratulations on finishing, if this is your first build, on finishing that. And I appreciate everyone for joining in. Let me know again if you like this kind of video, and I will be back with more, especially the electronics portion. And we can get this car finished, and we'll go over the remote, we'll do some test runs, things like that. So come back in the next video, and thanks for watching, and make sure you check out the Instagram and our Facebook page for more content. Thank you.